This build series reconnects me with Sandy, my first full restoration project. This 1982 FJ45 is mounted on an 80 series chassis and is equipped with a Barra turbo. But I'm removing the Barra and replacing it with a 6.2 litre LS3 to make Sandy into more of a weapon for its new owner. All right, as you can see, I am up to the wiring part. Now, this is, in my view, I actually enjoy doing this part because it requires a lot of thinking, requires a lot of brain work and that, and yeah, I really like it. But there's a lot of work in it and there's a lot of thinking that needs to be done to make sure you don't stuff it up. Now, this one here, this loom here is out of the VF. So this is the one that came off the car, right? Now, the issue that I've got with this is that where the ECU plugs in, where it was on this VF Commodore, it was in the engine bay. So my issue with this loom is, one, that it's got superfluous stuff in it that I don't need. So it's got like chassis control modules and all this sort of stuff. So that's all fine, you can cut all that out. But the biggest issue I've got with this is that where these two plug in, that needs to be extended out to about there, right? So that's my issue with that one. So I'm mates with Laurie at LCS, and I was talking to him about the conversion, and he had a standalone wiring loom that he just pulled out of his dad's car, actually. And it was all hooked up to the 6L80 box, everything like that. So I was like, cool, yeah, I'll take that. And it came with an ECU and the body control module. The ECU is unlocked, so it hasn't got the immobilizer on it. And I thought, cool. The issue that I had with this one, though, is that there's a whole lot of cut wires, because obviously they took it out of a car. And so it was then going through one by one, matching them up using my continuity tester to match it up to where it needed to be on the relevant wiring diagram so that I knew exactly where it needed to go. Now, so that's all fine. However, it's come to my attention that the wiring loom that was out of, like the standalone wiring loom's a VE one, and the one off the engine is a VF one. Now you think there's not too much difference. Yeah, there is. They even change the colors of the wires and that. Fortunately, where it plugs into the ECU, the pins don't change. So ECUs can be swapped between two different looms. But the issue is this standalone loom, say for instance, all the injector plugs, they're all different injector plugs. So I'd have to go through and change all the injector plugs on it. How it bolts up to the body control module to control the 6L80 box, all that's different, and the different configurations in all of that. So then the last sort of thing that got me thinking as well is that the ECU, whilst it's unlocked and doesn't have an immobilizer on it, is not matched up to the transmission control module that's in this gearbox. So it's going to have to require work anyway. So now I'm at the point of making a decision of which way do I want to go. Do I want to just modify this loom, the standalone loom with all the plugs and that from the VF, and then run an ECU that has a mobilizer off it but it's not matched up to the TCM? Or do I take that loom, extend the plugs, and then bolt up the VF ECU that has got a mobilizer on it, but it is linked up to the TCM? So I don't know which way I'm going to go yet. One thing I do know though is that regardless of what loom I use, I'm going to be putting a new fuse panel on it. So the fuse panel, I've worked out the relays that I need and the fuse circuits that I need. And so I'll make up a nice new fuse panel which will have all that included in there. So I've got one, I'll show you when I get it, but it's similar to the one that I used on the 1VD swap. So at least it's a nice combined package. But yeah, as you can see, all I've done is I've gone through the wiring diagrams as an example and just started highlighting all the circuits that I need in order to work out, one, what's the colour wire that I'm looking for, but two, where does it go to in terms of connecting up to the ECU. So it's got all the pin locations, everything in there. So what it means is that I can take this VF loom and I can chop it, and I know how I can get it all this length. All this length here is basically what I'm looking for in that loom. But in this loom, I would then have to chop off all the plugs and make sure the plugs are lined up to what I've got there. So I reckon that's probably going to be the least amount of work for me, but whether it's the right decision, I'm just not sure yet. So I'll ponder a little bit more. I'll let you know where I get to. All right, crisis averted with wiring. Once I've gone and put this VE harness on, what I was worried about the injector wiring, the injector plugs, they actually fit. They're just a completely different type of plug. When you look at the pins, they look different, but they fit on the injector. So there you go. So how this one runs is I've got all this length here, and then the ECU obviously can go inside. So where it runs on the VE is it starts here, so the ECU's here, and then it runs this way and it goes, bank that way and then down to the gearbox, and then it comes over there and then goes over that side. So it runs at the front there, whereas this one here runs at the back. So it does one bank there, the other bank there, so that's all fine. And then I'm just looking at the Firewall, and I reckon I'm going to use that existing hole there, which is where the factory heater tap goes, because I've got a grommet for it. And what I'll do is I'll just splice out the wires and I'll use that grommet so it creates a waterproof seal. So I think I'll do that. A couple of little plugs I will need to change. The O2 sensors, so I've gone through and worked all these out. So the O2 sensors will need to be changed, so I'll change the plugs on those. And there's a couple of other bits and pieces in there that I'll just make some chops and changes to, and then I'll rewrap it. But yeah, that's sort of crisis averted actually. A couple of, probably an hour ago I was fretting out a little bit, but I'm all right now. So let me take this off and then we'll keep going. All ready to go back into the car. That's, it's been a bit of a mission, but we've got it worked out. So what I've done, you'll see in the time lapse, I've gotten rid of the old fuse panel and the relays, and I've combined it into this Eaton Busman platform. I used this exact one on the 1VD swap, so that's why I liked it, because it's got spots for 5 relays and 10 fuses, and it's just nice and neat. And so what I've done is I've made that up, and I've made up a bracket for it to go on the inside of the cab on the passenger side. And then all of this, obviously the computer, like the ECU and the body control module, they'll all plug in there, and then that'll all then run out. And then what I'm going to use where the existing radiator tap came out. So there's a hole in the Firewall for that. I'm actually going to use that as my engine loom hole, because my body loom is going through the other side, and I still want to keep them separate because you can see how many wires there are here. So that'll all go out, and then I've just got to fit off all of this, which is the pedal, the OBD plug, and the shifter. And then I've got to run and connect that to the body loom, which is then the reverse light, and what else is in there? Fuel pump and the fan, the thermo. And then I've just got to put in the starter. So the starter one, I've got to give the start trigger to that, and then that'll obviously go out to the starter motor. So that loom has come up really nice actually. That's just in some cloth tape. I'm probably going to get some of the car builders underbody tape to do the outside, but the inside's quite nice in that cloth tape, so I really liked how that's come out. In terms of the body loom, I've taken out all of the Barra stuff, and then I've just started to tidy things up, because when I put it in, there was a few circuits that I'd forgotten about, and so it was putting on circuits after circuits after circuits. So I've just tidied all that up and got rid of what I don't need, and now I'm just starting to go through and just cloth tape all these and finish all these off. But I've got to still, this is for the gearbox, for the gear shifter, so I've still got to put that in. So that's all the wiring done, except for just fitting off in the cab once I finally put it all back in there. But what I've got to get onto next is some firewall repairs, and then painting the engine mount, chassis mount, and a few other bits and pieces. So let me take you over there and we'll have a look at that. All right, so as you can see, I've gone through and now this was the hole for the original ECU. So I had the ECU mounted on the inside of the firewall there, and then I had a big hole cut out so the Barra plugs could just plug straight into it. Well, we don't need that anymore. So instead of, I had a couple of different thoughts about what I was going to do here. And in the end, I just went, you know what, I'll just repair it up. So I'll throw a bit of paint on that. I also have cut out the holes for my heater and aircon. So that goes into a nice bulkhead fitting there. And then, this is the hole that I'm going to use to poke my engine loom out of. And then this is the hole for the body loom. And then, so what I'm going to also do, because we're going to run the aircon system, I don't need the fan mount, so I'll just get a plate made up for that, and then that can just be a blanking plate. But I'm just going to quickly rub this back now, and then give that a coat of paint, and then the cab's pretty much done then. And then the last part is just obviously going through and painting off the engine mount there, and also these mounts here. So this is my original radiator cradle. I had a bracket up here for the intercooler. I've just chopped that off. My pedal mount and my engine mounts. Now I've made up, I didn't put a time lapse on this, but I've actually just made up out of a piece of steel a mount for my body control module. So the body control module will just go into there. So I'll probably just put a bit of Velcro or something down the bottom, but paint that up nicely, and then that's a nice little mount for it. And then that's my bracket for the fuse panel. And then that one's just off for the aircon. In terms of the aircon wiring, so this is the slimline unit, which I've already test fitted up, which I'll show you a bit later on, probably in a future episode. But it's pretty much just power, ignition, earth, and then that goes out to the heater tap. So I've got to integrate that into the body loom just to finish all that off. And then, obviously I'll just mount those relays somewhere, because that can all just be a standalone system. So finishing it all off, there's 3 different looms in the car, but that's okay, that's fine. Well, it's actually 4, because there's another one here as well. But so I think what I'll do is I'll probably wrap this episode up here, because, you've seen me paint before, so you probably don't really need to see me painting again. So just paint that up, and then I think next episode I'm going to put in the engine again, mount it all in, start wiring it all up. I've got all my go fast bits for my exhaust, so cats, heap of bends, collectors, whatnot, mufflers. So I reckon that'll be next episode. We'll go through, once it's back in there, I'll start mocking up all the exhaust system and then probably almost getting to a point where I can start thinking about starting it up. So that'll be pretty exciting. Anyway, if you've made it this far, make sure, what do I say every week? It's smash that subscribe button. Thanks guys, and we'll catch you next time.